second here. So welcome. My name is Leone Jose Biquieri, Executive Director of Working Family Solidarity. Bienvenidos. Yo soy el Director Ejecutivo de Solidaridad de Familias Trabajadoras. Y vamos a empezar primero con una explicación sobre cómo usar su sistema de interpretación. Y después vamos a empezar todo oficialmente en los dos idiomas, inglés y español. So we're going to hear right now from Eva and Chris from the collective Somos Sur.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Muchas gracias por estar con nosotros. Chris, mi compa, y yo vamos a ser el equipo de interpretación para hoy. Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for being here. My comrade Chris and myself will be your interpreting for today. Hoy no tenemos dispositivos para poder explicar, pero básicamente en unos segundos vamos a aprender el modo de interpretación. Lo cual significa que va a aparecer al fondo de su pantalla un icono de forma de un globo. So we don't have the slides up, but in a minute, we're going to be able to turn the interpretation feature on. And so when that happens, you will see an icon of a globe at the bottom of your screen on that Zoom app. Si está en su teléfono, es posible que tenga que hacer clic en el icono de 3 puntos y luego seleccionar interpretación y el idioma. If you are using a mobile phone, it's most likely that you'll have to click on the 3-dot icon, then select interpretation, then select the language that you're most comfortable with. Si tienen algún problema en conectarse con el módulo de interpretación, mándenos un chat. If you have any issues with the interpretation feature mode, please feel free to drop it in the chat. Muchísimas gracias a los organizadores por hacer este espacio multilingüe. Thank you very much to the organizers for making this space a multilingual or bilingual space. Y con eso podemos empezar. And with that, we can start.
Okay, so we're going to have to hook up this system here. So here we go with the interpretation. We're going to need to add Eva and Chris. Just a second. Give us half a second here. We had a technical issue, so everyone got on early like they were supposed to, but we needed an extra couple minutes to deal with a minor problem. So, okay, let's see if these two are okay. Give me 1 second. Okay. Did that work, Eva and Chris? That okay? Eva and Chris, are we good? Yes, okay, great. Excellent. Okay. So now we're gonna officially start. I speak Spanish, but I'm going to speak English. And if you speak both languages, which we have a number of people on the call that do, please just use one language so we don't take as much time, because we have the interpreters who will be doing, if you're speaking Spanish, they'll speak English. And if you're speaking English, they'll speak Spanish, so that everyone can understand and we can go through and have as much time together as possible. So, bienvenidos a todos, a todas. My name is Leone Jose Biquieri. I'm the Executive Director of Working Family Solidarity. Thank you very much for making time to be with us. You probably know, but I'll remind you that the topic this evening for this teach-in is workplace violence against women. And we have someone who has suffered that. Unfortunately, it's way too common in Chicago. And we also have someone who's been supporting that person from St. Anthony's Hospital, and she will talk also about her experiences. We also have an attorney with whom we work a lot of the time, does great stuff for working people, and he's also supporting Julia. And then one of our longtime community allies and a longtime former board member of ours now, Reverend Falicia Campbell, will also talk about some of the experiences of her constituents. And we really appreciate you being on. Feel free at any time to comment at any time you would like in the chat. Since it's a webinar, you cannot speak, but when we get to a couple minutes to 7, when the panel ends, each of you, I will click the invite to be a panelist so that you can basically come in and it'll be more like a meeting for the last little while. You don't have to accept that. Some people would rather just stay doing the chat and watching, that's fine. So that's how it'll work. Each of the 4 panelists, and I'm going to introduce them in a second, they will each get 10 minutes or a little less if they want, but up to 10 minutes. They'll talk, but I'm not going to recognize any question or comment until the very end. Okay, so we don't do one and then we wait and do all the questions after the first panelist. So, but if you're in there, we'll do all we can to come back and ask your question first. So bear with us, we'll do the best we can. Some of you may not know Working Family Solidarity. I'm going to be very brief. You can go to www.workingfamilysolidarity.org. I don't want to explain too much about us. The short version is we unite low and moderate income families, especially African American and Latinx families in the Chicago area, to fight together for equitable income. So we feel like we're being pushed out of the city, and we're being pushed out of a lot of places, and the wealthy folks have found a legal way essentially to displace us. And so instead of the army forcefully displacing us, the rising costs can displace us, and technically no one's committed any violation of the law if prices go up and we're pushed out of the city, as have more than 200,000 African Americans in Chicago in the last 15 years, and tens of thousands of Latinos as well. So we fight together mainly around the issues of worker rights and jobs, and housing rights and housing. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. And we look forward to hearing. I'll repeat this at the end, but you have my email if you got an invitation and got on. If you go back to that, and we'll do follow-up, you'll see my email. Please be in touch with us so that we can continue to work together on workplace violence against women, and also violence against other low-wage workers at the workplace and in housing. Okay, and I'll repeat that at the end. So we're going to start with our first panelist, who is Julia Peña. And Julia is going to talk a little bit about a very difficult experience she had recently and her decision to fight back. And we're very proud to have been supporting her for a bunch of weeks, and hopefully we'll get even more support soon. So Julia, si tú quieres empezar a hablar, por favor, sigue.
Sí, mi nombre es María Julia, y pues quiero darle las gracias a todos por haberse tomado su tiempo de estar hoy aquí apoyándome. Desgraciadamente fui acosada sexualmente y fui también asaltada sexualmente cuando yo comencé a trabajar en una pollería. En esa pollería comencé primeramente a ser acosada con palabras y con señas. Pasado de 2 semanas ya comenzó como ya con lo que fue tocarme, haciendo ya de manera muy diferente, porque ya me comenzó, ¿verdad?, a faltar más, porque ya me comenzó a tocar, me comenzó a decir. Entonces yo por eso estoy hoy aquí, para yo ser la voz de muchas de esas personas que son víctimas de acoso sexual. Tanto habemos hombres como mujeres que somos pues acosados, y muchas veces por tener miedo a no hablar, todo queda solo en un reporte, a veces ni en un reporte, porque no tenemos, ¿verdad?, el valor de llegar a ese lugar. Yo llegué a ese lugar a hacer pues, primero yo salí de allí iba yo como que sentía yo mucho dolor por haber sido víctima de esa manera, por andar buscando el sustento para mi familia. Y por un momento yo pensé, pues, como decir, continúo aquí porque necesito seguir trabajando, necesito el dinero. Pero ya otro día yo misma me dije, no, tú no tienes que continuar ahí. Es verdad que te hace falta el sustento para tu familia y todo, pero tú estás en un lugar en donde no estás segura. Entonces fue por eso que yo acudí a una estación de policía a hacer el reporte, y pues sentí que fui discriminada. Cuando yo entregué me pide mi ID el policía, mira que mi ID es pues una matrícula consular, y ahí fue cuando él me dice, habla con esta policía, dijo, al fin que tú sabes hablar inglés, cuando antes me iba a atender un sargento, y por falta del idioma, él pidió ayudarme. Entonces cuando él mira mis documentos, prácticamente yo ahí fue donde sentí el rechazo. No sé si van a traducirlo.
Ya lo están traduciendo.
Okay.
O sea, la gente que, como ellos explicaron, como las dos compañeras explicaron, hay un botón para este tipo de presentación. Entonces, la gente que no entiende español, escogieron inglés o están escuchándote en inglés. Pero puedes seguir.
Ok, entonces de esa manera yo me sentí, les digo, como yo me sentí discriminada, me sentí como que no valgo nada. ¿Qué es lo que quieren? Que cuando yo llegue a hacer un reporte a la policía, quieren que yo ya venga, pues ahora sí ya, que ya haya habido la violación o ya venga de otra manera lastimada. ¿Qué es lo que quieren? Me sentí tan mal que yo ese día, de ahí me fui a buscar información con un concejal, y el concejal está por las 51, casi llegándole creo que a la California, por allí. No recuerdo ahorita el nombre de ese concejal. Él me dio solamente unos papeles y me dijo que con esos papeles yo fuera por allí, por el centro, por la Michigan, no sé por qué parte por allá, por el centro, ¿verdad? A donde es lo de, como de la Cámara de Comercio. Que yo llevara esos papeles allí para yo hacer la denuncia. Sí, yo ese día me fui, llegamos, está muy enredoso para llegar. Llegué, pero ya era muy tarde. A otro día, pues ya me sentí decepcionada y yo dije, ya agarré, ¿verdad? Ese día fue un jueves que yo agarré y comencé a lavar mi ropa, eché toda la ropa. Ya después, pues yo vuelvo y busco la ayuda porque yo dije, no es justo que yo me quede así. Entonces ya había la organización que es a la señora que más que nos ayudó fue Dolores. Dolores, pues ya habló yo creo que con Leoned y Angelica. Ya fue de la manera que Angelica pues me llevó a ver a la policía, a otro distrito, y allí fue donde me hicieron los reportes. Ahí ya me prestaron la atención que yo necesitaba desde el día miércoles, que yo ya ese día no fui a trabajar. El día que yo dejé de trabajar fue el martes. Entonces ya el miércoles voy a la otra estación de policía, me rechazan. El jueves, pues yo lavo mi ropa, todo, y ya el día viernes fue que fuimos y hicimos ese reporte a otra diferente estación de policía. Entonces yo por eso aquí estoy, ¿verdad? Abogando por todas esas personas y pidiendo que no se queden calladas, que busquen ayuda. La ayuda la hay. Solo que pues necesitamos estar informados y no dejar que nos sigan intimidando, que nos sigan haciendo sentir menos por nuestros estatus, por el idioma. Sé que muchos tenemos mucho miedo porque muchas veces te intimidan con que te vas a ser deportado, te van a echar a migración, porque si tú hablas, hay muchos eventos que pasan en esos lugares, y pues yo no quiero que más personas vivan lo que yo pasé, aunque a mí me decía esta persona que como que yo ya estaba grande de edad, porque también de esa manera me catalogaba, que yo ya estaba grande de edad, como diciendo que puedes perder. Yo me sentía así como, ¿qué puedes perder? Porque tú ya tienes 6 hijos, tú ya no eres pues como una mujer joven, ¿de qué vas a perder algo? Pero yo digo, tengo derechos y pues voy a hacer que mis derechos sean respetados y hacerme respetar y hacer valerlos también. Y pues yo, por eso, como me preguntaban la otra vez que qué me había llevado, ¿verdad? A yo continuar con esto. Yo dije, yo no me voy a quedar solamente con los reportes. ¿Qué me gano con hacer un reporte y ese reporte se ha archivado nada más allí? Entonces lo que yo digo, no, yo tengo que seguir adelante, no solo defendiendo mis derechos míos, sino defendiendo los derechos de muchas otras personas. Eso fue lo que yo pensé. ¿Por qué? Por la razón de que yo también soy madre. Tengo hijas que están comenzando a trabajar y que no saben qué es lo que hay que hacer en una situación de estas. Entonces yo quiero que les enseñemos a nuestros hijos, a nuestra gente que sale a trabajar, a que cuando suceda esto que a mí me está sucediendo, actúen y lleven sus casos a los lugares correspondientes y que sean escuchados, que sean respetados, que no dejen perder los programas, porque programas hay. Y si nosotros no ocupamos de los servicios, pues nos los quitan. Y eso es lo que yo busco, ¿verdad? Que no haya más víctimas, que a veces nos quedamos calladas y después resulta de que cuando ya la encuentran muerta o ya la encuentran en otra situación, dicen, oh, esta estaba siendo acosada sexualmente. ¿Pero qué? Ya se dice, ya sale a la luz todo eso cuando ya no hay más nada que hacer, porque ya pasó a otra vida. ¿Por qué? Porque ya se quedaron, ¿cuántas familias se quedan sin sus padres, sin hermanos? ¿Cuántos padres se quedan sin hijos? Por lo mismo, porque uno se queda callado. Y pues yo quiero, ¿verdad? Yo quiero ser la voz de esas personas. Quiero ser su voz de ellos, de esas gentes que no tienen el valor de llegar a donde yo estoy ahora. Y yo voy a llegar a donde tenga que llegar, a donde yo tenga que ir. Yo seguiré apoyando esta causa en la cual yo ya estoy adentro. ¿Sí?
Muchísimas gracias, Julia. Thank you very much, Julia. So, you know, I'll transition to the next panelist. I'll simply say that here at Working Family Solidarity, we heard from a great community activist who's with us right now, Dolores Castañeda from Little Village, and she works with UIC, and she works with just about everyone, and an incredible force in the community. And she then told me about Angelica Rosales, who's going to speak next, and they both talked to me about Julia, and then a few days later, Julia came to our office, and so on. And you know, I've been doing this a long time, and I wish it were something that I was seeing for the first time, but it's not. I saw this decades ago when I worked in the farm worker movement, and I've seen it all over the country and for the last 15 years here in Chicago. So it's not something that we are prepared to get used to ever. We're never going to get used to this, and we're going to end it. And we, if any men out there think that this is anything other than a brutal, horrific human rights violation, you need to rethink. We workers are not going to win this struggle for justice with half the workers on the sideline. All men, all women have to participate. No man can permit a woman to be abused. If you do that, you don't believe in human rights or civil rights. You also don't believe in the struggle for worker justice, because all workers must be respected, no matter what. And even a little whistle towards a woman, it's not okay, because they're not asking you to do it. So don't do it. Right? We men have to take responsibility, right? When we look the other way, or when we laugh, when our friend makes a really disgusting joke, don't laugh anymore, okay? Let's end this stuff. We have the right people to do it. A lot of you, I say this every single time we do a teaching, and we're gonna go to Angelica now, and I mean it. Half the people, and sometimes maybe all the people who get on the teaching could run this whole teaching and could run a whole campaign. So thank you so much for giving your time today. A lot of you who are here with us. Next, we have Angelica Rosales. She works with St. Anthony Hospital. She does community outreach, crisis intervention. From what I've learned, I think she does just about everything. She reached out to us. She's been helping Julia, but that's the tip of the iceberg. She does so much for so many of us. And she's going to talk a little bit about knowing Julia, but also other things that she's seen in her job that touch on this topic. So Angelica, please.
Thank you, Leone. Hello, everyone. My name is Angelica Rosales. I am a VOCA caseworker, crisis intervention for St. Anthony Hospital Community Wellness Program. And oh my God, what can I say, right? We already live in a community where there's like low poverty, and the services are definitely needed. And, I came across Julia Peña, she, as she, spoke about her story. She was recently sexually assaulted and harassed at her previous job. And it saddens me that, our system honestly is broken, and it had us organizations in the community have to advocate for, our people. And, when she came, she was sad. She was upset because, she had gone to the police station and they had turned her away. And, right away, I had contacted Dolores Castañeda. As you guys know, she's an amazing, everybody knows her. She does so much for the community, and she connected me with the executive director Leone for Workers Family Solidarity, and we are so glad that he was able to take on my case. And I'm just going to briefly kind of like bring a little bit of awareness of what clients or people who are going through these situations, what is it that you should do? Don't give up, right? We come here to this country looking for a better dream, a better job, and a better future for our families. And a lot of the people that come here aren't educated. Just because people don't have a social or an ITIN number, and you have to work in certain locations, that doesn't mean that you have to take the bad treatment, be sexually harassed. Everybody has a voice. And just because, you're trying to survive and you think that there's no support, nobody's going to pay attention to you. That is wrong. In Julia's case, she had gone to the police station and she had already washed her clothes. By the time that we went to another police station to, make a report, my client had already washed her clothes. She had already, gotten rid of evidence. So the only thing that I would advise clients or, people in the community who are going through this is that don't give up. I understand that a lot of the times the smell or, seeing the clothes could bring, bad memories. It could affect your mental health, and all you could do is just save that. Save the clothes, because on the long run, it's going to help you. Either your case or, with the attorneys, it's going to help you. Do not give up. If somebody turns you away, keep looking. There are organizations out there. There are support out there. Just like, Working Families Solidarity. There's a lot of other organizations like my organization, Community Wellness Program. Like, we are here to help the community. We are here to fight for your rights. We are here to advocate for you. It could be any situation. It doesn't have to be specifically at work. It could be at school. It could be out in the street. The resources are there, and there's a lot of resources that are free. It's just a lot of people do not know, and once again, they're afraid, right? And another thing, a lot of people also don't like to speak about these situations because of stigma, right? They don't like to bring up that, oh, I was sexually assaulted, because everybody is going to point fingers at me. That's not the case. Look for help, reach out. There's a lot of organizations that do offer the support, legal, housing. There is. Another tip that I would recommend for clients: if you go to the police station and they don't help you, you could call 311, and there's somebody there to take a report. Don't give up. Keep looking for resources. Keep looking for organizations that are going to be able to help you. Like I said, I'm so like glad and honored that Julia, came to our organization, and we are able to advocate for her. We don't leave our clients on their own. We're going to be with our clients every step of the way. And just, remember, you're not alone. Just because you're here from a different country or you're here from a different state, you do not need to tolerate any disrespect. And that goes for both. It's not only for women. This also happens to men. And, just speak up, and help other people. We could remain anonymous. People don't need to know your name, but this is a time that this needs to stop. Like, this needs to stop. Places like that, where Julia was working, it's in our neighborhood, right? And we have to speak up, and we have to talk about the situation, and it's not okay, for other clients to be working in that environment. My thing is to be like, look for resources. San Anthony Hospital Community Wellness offers a great team that offers case management, individual therapy, couples therapy. There's a lot of resources that are offered to the community. We offer English and Spanish. Later on, I could provide more information of where people could call. And, we have different locations, North Lawndale, Bratton Park, Little Village, and Back of the Yards. So we are located everywhere. Give us a call. I will provide information, and give us a call, and let's see how we could advocate for each other. We are not alone. There is a team out there who is willing to help. A lot of people tend to, oh no, I don't have money for attorneys. I don't have money for this. And don't let that stop you. Don't let that stop you, because there's resources out there. And, like Legal Aid, there's a lot of other organizations who offer the free services. So why not? If you don't say anything, nobody's going to speak for you. If you're afraid, look for help. Do not stay quiet, because there is a lot of people who are going through the same situation, but are afraid to speak because of their legal status. And that should not be a reason for you not to speak, because we have rights. We have rights. So no, thank you, everyone. And like I said, I'm more than honored to be part of this and to help Julia and a lot of other cases, that San Anthony has been able to help. Like I said, it doesn't have to be for sexual assault. Like, we have a huge team who is ready to support in any way that we can. And, our services are free. We are VOCA. VOCA stands for Victims of a Crime Act. So we defend people. We look for the resources. We don't turn nobody, we don't turn our backs on nobody. Our goal is to, work for justice, work for violence against women, against men, and just, against the system who's trying to bring us down, especially us that we are minority. Like, we need to get together and fight for our rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angelica. Like I said, we have so many great people, and at all of our teachings, we're able to get so many people, some that we know, some that we met. And I think, one of the signs of hope in some ways, like I'd mentioned earlier, for myself, and I know for a lot of you, as panelists and many of you attending, I know a lot of you and your amazing histories and trajectories of fighting. And I think you'll agree with me that unfortunately, this is something we've seen for many, many years, right? But again, I think it's dangerous to ever accept it. We can never say, yeah, boy, that's pretty tough, especially for immigrant women, man, just suck it up. No, this needs to end. And I think the positive thing is if we come together, that's the key, because sadly, there's way more poor people than there is anyone else, right? Just that we often are so busy trying to survive that we can't really take that time to come together, plan together, coordinate, and really look at how our interests, African-American, Latinx, white, Chinese, doesn't matter. We all have the same interests as workers, right? We get up in the morning, we're selling our physical or mental labor to someone else for that day. And we hope they'll hire us the next day, right? And so if we come together and really understand how powerful we can be, then we see that we're only powerful through our numbers, and therefore we have to have a high degree of organization, right? Because we're so weak alone in some ways, but together we really run society. We're the economic motor for Chicago and for the nation and for the world. So I think that's where we can really get hope, like the people who've come together in the recent weeks to support. Julia, I did not know Angelica before. There was a time, you got to go back some years, I had not yet met Reverend Campbell or Jorge or a lot of you on this call. So we can do it. We just got to keep multiplying our numbers and be really coordinated, right? I'll just say this, and I'll mention again at the end, in case we put some things in the chat and people don't have time to get it. I will send out an email tomorrow, And I'll give the panelists a chance to put any info they want in it, and I'll add some more. And so we'll just make sure that everyone can stay in touch with us, and we have your email so we can let you know how Julia's fight continues and certain campaigns that perhaps we can work on together, okay? So if things get lost tonight or you have to jump off a few minutes early, you'll be getting an email from us. It's my honor to introduce someone that I have to say, because I think it's important, that he's an attorney, but he's my friend at this point. We've worked together for years, just a great brother. Again, I've always tell people, if you work in the movement, it's really hard, but you'll meet the greatest people that you'll ever meet. Jorge Sanchez is one of them. He's an attorney with Lopez and Sanchez. He's worked primarily on labor, but labor violations, workplace violations, but he's also done, unfortunately, had to do a number of cases to support women with sexual harassment and sexual assault. We're very lucky to have him with us tonight in general as a friend and supporter, and to talk a little bit. He's representing Julia, and he's representing a lot of our members, and he's doing really great things. And Jorge, once again, thanks very much for being with us.
I have to remember to unmute myself. Thank you, Leone. Thank you, Leone. Thank you for inviting me. I wanted to thank Julia, Ms. Peña, for having the courage to come forward. It's not an easy thing to complain about workplace sexual violence or harassment or any workplace problem, really. Most of us are in some way or another tied to our employment and require the income that we get from work to sustain ourselves and our families. And we understand that raising issues, people call it causing problems or making trouble at work, will often result in people being terminated and us being terminated. And so there are laws that protect us against that. There are laws that protect all of us against that. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But I really wanted to recognize Ms. Peña's courage to come forward, to be persistent about it. I mean, she talked about how it wasn't easy to get help, how the police treated her poorly at first, and it's not easy to continue even after that's been done, to say, oh, I'm still going to keep going and keep working on this. So again, I thank Leone, I thank Julia, and I thank Ms. Rosales as well for giving her the assistance that she needed when she needed it. I'm going to talk a little bit about workplace violence and sexual harassment from a couple different perspectives. One is from the perspective of employment law. There are laws that prohibit workplace sexual assault and workplace sexual violence. The laws don't necessarily say it on their face that they're anti-sexual harassment and anti-sexual workplace violence laws. They're general anti-discrimination laws that are used to combat discrimination in the workplace. And there's basically state laws and federal laws. The federal law is a law called Title VII, and it prohibits discrimination in the workplace on the basis of sex, religion, race, sexual orientation, age, disability, gender, and religion. I think I got them all. But in all of those different categories, you can, you see similar sort of behaviors of people towards what they call protected classes. Those are that list of characteristics that I went over are if you have whatever your characteristics are, they're protected classes. And so if you, for instance, for age, you have to be over 40. If you're a person with a disability, you're protected. If you're a woman or a man, you're protected against sexual discrimination in the workplace. You're protected against race discrimination, also color discrimination, which is an interesting variation. We see incidents of people of the same race, but different shades of skin being subject to discrimination because of that. And that's actually illegal. So the Title VII makes it illegal to harass or assault someone in the workplace because it prohibits treating someone differently on the basis of their sex or gender. And certainly, we unfortunately, I think that the vast majority of cases of sexual harassment and sexual violence are aimed at women. And so the idea is that, and in these workplaces, it's not like men get sexually harassed and women get sexually harassed too. No, that's not how it happens. It's usually the case that women are being sexually harassed and men aren't. And that's why the law says you can't do that. You can't treat women differently than you're treating men. And if you start harassing people verbally, physically, and even sort of like gestures, the way you look at somebody. If a woman is walking past and a man kind of looks at her, or makes a comment, or that all is sexual harassment. And the law of employment requires a person who's subject to sexual harassment generally to complain about it. And it's a difficult situation to complain, but if you don't complain about it, it's usually the case that an employer will try to say that they didn't know about it. And the law treats harassment differently, whether it's coming from a coworker or from a manager. If it's coming from a coworker, a person who's subject to sexual harassment needs to complain to management, needs to complain to somebody in authority about their coworker harassing them. And like I said, that's because it's possible that an employer may not know. It's also always best, if possible, to put communications about these things in writing, and to do it more than one way. You can do it through email, you can do it through letter, you can do it through certified mail, you can send texts, you can send photos, but really documenting what's going on is rather important. And documenting the fact that you're complaining about it is important. Once a person reports a coworker, that a coworker is sexually harassing them, an employer is supposed to put a stop to it. Oftentimes, I get clients that say, well, this person's still working here and nothing's happened to them. They didn't get suspended. They didn't get fined. I still have to work with them. Unfortunately, the law doesn't require them to fine or suspend or fire somebody. An employer is better off if they take measures to discipline a worker who's harassing their fellow workers. I think that if they don't, they run the risk of it happening again. And if it happens again, then the employer is liable. In a situation where it doesn't happen again, unfortunately, one instance of sexual harassment from a coworker tends not to be civilly actionable, meaning you can't sue your employer because your coworker one time did something to you. You complained about it. If the employer put a stop to it, that was the end of it. And unfortunately, the law doesn't do much more than that. In the law of Title VII, and then it's different if it's a supervisor who's harassing you. If it's a supervisor who's harassing you, you should still document. You should still tell them no. You should complain to the HR, complain to their superior. Sometimes it's the owner of a company. I mean, I know people who work for a small company where it's the owner themselves that are sexually harassing people. And I think it's really, really important that you document it and that you tell other people. I mean, there are companies that are small enough that may not even have an HR department to complain to. And obviously, people who do this aren't going to admit that they do it, that they did it. They're going to lie. They're going to say it never happened, or they're going to say, this person wanted it. And so it's important to discourage harassing language, harassing behavior. Another thing that's important is to figure out if there are people who are witnessing the behavior. If you have an opportunity to talk to them after these incidents take place, it's useful. It can be really, really useful to have witnesses to what's happening. Sometimes there's also sort of almost a mutual aid thing that can happen at work, where workers start looking out for each other and sort of make sure that they're not left alone with a harasser, right? That their coworkers don't leave that person alone, whereas they can be isolated and victimized by someone who's predatory. Under the state law, there's also a law on the state level that protects people in the workplace. It's the Illinois Human Rights Act, and it pretty much overlaps with Title VII. What I said about Title VII is true of the Illinois Human Rights Act as well. You need to complain about coworkers harassing you to put a stop to it before you can make the employer legally responsible for it. And supervisors also, if they harass their employees, can make the company directly liable. One big difference in the Illinois Human Rights Act that doesn't overlap with the federal law is that you can actually sue individuals for sexual harassment. Under the federal law, when you sue for sexual harassment or sexual assault in the workplace under Title VII, you're suing the employer, and you're not directly suing the person who did that to you. In the case of the state law, there is a cause of action directly against the perpetrator. And that can be a coworker, that can be a manager, it can be the owner of a company, if those are the people who are the harassers. It's also important, in addition to workplace law, there's what we call common law torts. When people talk about a lawsuit, that's usually what they're talking about. You had a slip and fall and you're suing for injuries, for personal injuries. It's illegal to touch somebody without their consent. And when you touch someone without their consent, that is a crime. It's called battery. But there's also a tort, a civil action that can be brought for battery as well. And so it's important to realize that unwanted touching is a crime as well as being a civil wrong. And so again, the sorts of actions that one would take when this happens, documenting the incidents, identifying witnesses, notifying management, calling police, and turning to other resources when these incidents happen helps to put you in a better place to redress this wrong through the civil system as well as the criminal system. I mean, there is always the possibility of pursuing criminal charges, although lawyers, private lawyers don't bring criminal charges. It's the state's attorney's office that decides whether they're going to charge people. There certainly is the possibility of simultaneous criminal charges against perpetrators as well as civil cases against those same perpetrators. And I guess that's about what I want to say today. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jorge. I know there's a lot to say. Each of you has a lot to say and worth listening to. I appreciate everyone being disciplined and keeping it to about 10 minutes. So we can also make sure that Reverend Falicia Campbell has a moment here. Again, we will be following up with people so that we can stay in touch if you have to get off early or whatever, or even a few minutes early, so that you can email our organization and so that you'll have other people's contact information as well. One thing I wanted to mention really quickly as I transition is Title VII. Maybe everyone knows about it, some of you know about it, but that's Title VII civil rights law. And so a lot of times, again, as low-income workers, moderate income workers, we feel pitted one group ethnically against another. We tend to identify with our sort of ethnic group, whoever that group is. whoever you identify with. And we tend to think that our struggles are kind of similar, but not that similar, or that we don't even have a similar history of struggle, or that another group's struggle helped us. Title VII comes out of the African American Civil Rights Movement. Title VII came out of a struggle of certainly not only, right, but largely African American people dying, being killed, right, to try to vote, to try to have equal access to housing, equal access to jobs. Lo and behold, how much did that help Latinx people? Quite a bit. My mom, God rest her soul, she's from Mexico originally. She passed away last summer, but she was a lawyer with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So she spent her professional life, after she was a community organizer for many years, she went to law school, and she spent the last part of her professional life defending Title VII. So a lot of us Latinos, Latinx people who think, well, you know, yeah, I guess we can work together with Black folks, I guess it's kind of strategic. It's much more than a little bit strategic. We have the same struggle. The African American struggle has given us Latinos so many rights, and we don't even know that they came out of that struggle in many cases, especially for immigrant people coming here, you know, later in their adult life. So we're so united. We should celebrate that unity and find strategic ways to make both of our communities have all the rights that we deserve. That leads me to my next terrific friend, mentor, you know, advisor, one of the founding board members of our organization and a key community ally, Reverend Falicia Campbell. She's an ordained Lutheran minister. She's pastor and director of For Your Consciousness Ministry at 1923 West 51st Street, a place that she generously lets us use now and then to meet with people and support people as well. So Reverend Campbell, thank you. I know that reasonably soon you'll need to go to another meeting, and we thank you very much for spending a little bit of time with us. You're on mute. Sorry, Reverend. There you go.
Can you hear me? There
Yes,
you
ma'am.
go.
Yes,
All right,
ma'am.
we're good. All right. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you so much for the presentations. I am just overwhelmed and so thankful to know that no longer women have to be, or men have to go through such craziness in order to get help. Many, many years ago, I had a shelter. It was predominantly Hispanic, but it was also African-American as well. And down the street from the church on 51st Street, a little further down, maybe Honorary, somewhere down there, they had a daytime job where you'd have to get up at 4 and 5 in the morning to go down there and apply and stand in line. Of course, a lot of my ladies, they did that. And they would always come back, those that went, they would come back looking very strange. And I asked the question, well, what happened? Why are you looking that way? Did you have lunch? Did you need some money? Did you get paid? And they said, well, no, they would never tell me what happened. But sooner or later, they began to say that they were sexually abused. And one of the guys told them that if you did not do what we say, we will get rid of you. We will say that you abused us. And of course, that made them nervous. And he began to tell her, get more women and you'll get more money. It got real crazy until at the end of the day, she was totally mentally, physically, and spiritually abused because she didn't know which way was up. And all the other ladies, they couldn't do anything. They followed her lead because they were getting paid, I think $7, $8 a day. That's all. And so finally, one of them said, I'm going to go to the police. And she went to the police, and the police, of course, confronted the company, and they said, these are homeless women, and they come, and sometimes we have to put them out because they harass us. Well, I knew that was a lie. So they brought me on. I said, no, that's not true. They come to work, and I know they come to work because I get up 4 or 5 in the morning to make sure they have breakfast and make sure they get there safe. So I know what's going on. I know what has been happening. But because they have nothing to do about it, because they didn't care about them, because they were homeless, they were African American, they were Hispanic women, these guys never got fired. And they, of course, they were co-owners of the business, and nothing happened. But one young lady just so happened was smart. She was an accountant, and her uncle was an attorney, and he tried it on her, and she did get him. But the rest of the women, because they had left the shelter, and of course, Mayor Daley had closed all the shelters at that time, nothing could be done for them. So I am happy to know today that there is help for them. And I hear it more and more each day, particularly with young girls, older women, as far as young men, the same thing that's going on with young men as well. The teachers are messing with the children. It's just ridiculous, but they have a way out. But the only thing we must do is they must be allowed to talk. So if your child says, I want to talk to you about something that happened in school today, listen. Or if your child, your niece says something, some man is following me, listen, because you can stop that and you can help them. Thank you so very much. We are all in this together, and we do love each other. And listen, we can make it. We can make it, but we have to be the ones to work with the change. I want to get that attorney's number because I still have that issue with some women coming to the pantry. Just yesterday, a young woman was harassed by her boyfriend, who she put out and came back to get in and almost killed her. But she got him in jail now. Listen, let's continue to pray. Let's continue to love. And we are one people, one body of Christ. There's not but one blood, one Lord, one baptism, one faith. I love you, Naomi and Sharon and my friends here. God bless your consciousness.
Thank you very much, Reverend. And, you know, again, the similarities that poor working people of color have is we have too many similarities, right? And too many of them are negative. We're treated the same negative way by different types of powerful people, right? And often at our employment. And obviously there's a lot of other types of violence against women. We're really scraping the surface, the tip of the iceberg today. But at least it's one more chance to bring us together. And, you know, I've seen Reverend Campbell dealing with folks over many years and really helping them to find the spiritual strength to fight back. And then we work together to try to help people understand the strategic importance of coming together so that we don't feel alone. I already have a few questions in the question and answer, and then we can look at some more from the chat. Some more of you can feel free to ask questions. I'm going to go ahead and start with a couple of questions that someone had here in the question and answer box, and then I'll go back down through the chat too as well to see if anyone wants to add anything. But one person asked, and this might be for you, Jorge, and then of course I am going to make sure that all of the panelists have a chance to say something once or even twice. So if most questions end up being to one panelist, I'm going to also make sure that that I ask some more questions and have comments so that all the panelists can say something. And then right at the very end at about 7:25, we'll end by 7:30 sharp, that each of you has 1 minute to say whatever you want at the end. Okay, so just to remind you. So Arnold Bradford, and I'm very proud to have him. He's a board member with us at Working Family Solidarity, and is also executive director of Crossroads Collaborative and longtime veteran of many great fights here in Chicago. Arnold had a question saying, does the harassment need to be pervasive or persistent? Or can it, just be something that happens briefly once?
That's a very, very good question. There are different kinds of harassment, and there are different theories of harassment then legally. So you can sue based on what's called a hostile work environment, okay? And in that situation, in order to make out a case for a hostile work environment, yes, it has to be pervasive, it has to be frequent, it has to be reoccurring. But there's also what's called quid pro quo sexual harassment, right? Which is, you want a promotion? Okay, well, you have to, give me favors. You want the work overtime? You have to go out with me. That's a different kind of sexual harassment. And that doesn't have to be severe or pervasive. I mean, just the fact that somebody says, if you won't sleep with me, I'll fire you. If you don't sleep with me, you won't get the promotions, et cetera, et cetera. Those are sort of single instance. Now the other, there unfortunately, we deal with a society that is very much a reflection of the pathologies that are in our society, misogyny and sexism, and certainly the courts that enforce our laws are no exception. So, you have cases where a single act of sexual harassment or assault is sufficient to state a claim under Title VII. And then you have cases where usually an older white male judge will see a single instance of harassment or assault, and even if it's severe, there's definitely cases out there where judges have rejected those lawsuits. I think they're fewer and far between these days, but the reality is, our courts are politicized. Our judges are appointed politically. Our federal judges are appointed politically, and so are state judges, and though we're elected, they're elected on the state level, but that's still a political process, and it means that the people who are doing the appointing appoint people who reflect their politics, and so we had 4 years of the last president appointing a lot of people who are hostile to all kinds of civil rights, not just on behalf of minorities, people of color, but also people with disabilities, trans people, LGBTQ people, and women, and unfortunately, those attitudes are often reflected by the people who end up on the bench. So unfortunately, the answer in a lawyerly way is it depends. Sometimes a single instance of sexual assault can be sufficiently severe that you get liability under Title VII, and sometimes it isn't. And that's part of the reason why we have these other tools like being able to sue someone for assault or battery, that in some cases you want to bring every possible claim you can bring in these cases because there is some uncertainty.
Okay, so I'm going to follow up. The person kind of had a two-part question also for you, Jorge, and then I'm going to ask another question for Angelica and Julia. But sort of part B of Arnold Bradford's original question was, do coworkers, and this is actually relevant, I think, for Julia, but do coworkers have an obligation to report harassment?
Unfortunately not. And, when we talk about getting witnesses for these things, it's really helpful to get witnesses closer to the time that these things happen. If you can get statements from people in writing and get them to sign statements closer to when it happens, it's better. As a lawyer, I understand that it's very hard to get people who continue to work in a workplace to be witnesses against their employers. And basically that's what witnesses in sexual harassment cases are. They're witnesses against their employers. And although there are laws against retaliation, and somebody who participates and who gives a statement or helps somebody who's been sexually assaulted or discriminated against, there's laws that protect those people from retaliation. But the protection comes after the fact. So if you get disciplined or terminated, for instance, for complaining about someone else's treatment, or saying, yeah, I don't like what you did to them, or I was a witness for that person, right? Or you support them, or you go with them to management, you also have a claim. But unfortunately, there is no law that requires coworkers to speak out for you. And even, in a lawsuit, you have the power to make people come and give testimony, either at trial or in what's called a deposition. But even in those situations, a lot of times people will not be truthful, or they'll be they'll say they don't remember, or they'll minimize conduct that might have been really bad. And it's an unfortunate thing that the employer continues to have influence over witnesses in those situations.
Okay, here's what I'm going to do. Thank you very much, Jorge. I'm going to invite a guest to make a comment here about a different event coming up early next week. And then we're going to kind of take a chunk right out of here just for a minute briefly. This is someone who supported a lot of our teach-ins from the Kalmanovitz initiative at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., a great person, great friend of ours, James Benton. I'm going to invite him in as a panelist so he can be seen for a moment. He's going to give us a little bit of info. So we're going to take give him 1 or 2 minutes to do that. And then I'm going to come back and have a question for both Julia and for Angelica. But first, let me introduce, and let me see if I can quickly invite him in and do this without taking too much time here. James, you might have to accept it. I tried to promote you to panelist. Let me see. Yes, awesome. Okay, so again, James is with coming to us live from Washington, D.C., Georgetown University from Kalmanovitz initiative, promoting great stuff around housing and working also with low-income people of color, like Working Family Solidarity, and like a lot of us are talking about tonight, promoting a national social contract. And he wanted to give us a little information on a panel coming up on Tuesday, March 1st, that I'm honored to be a part of as well. And I wanted to make sure people met him because we may be doing more things together. And and he supported us so much. I wanted to give him a minute or two. And then again, we'll be back on the topic with Julia and Angelica. And James, if you want to work in any comment about tonight's discussion, please feel free. So you've got the floor.
All right. Thank you, Leone. I greatly appreciate the opportunity, and thank you also for the great event that you're putting on tonight. I want to say, first of all, to Julia, thank you for your courage and your perseverance, because this is not easy, and it is incredibly important for workers to stand up and fight for their rights, no matter the difficulty. And I want to acknowledge the difficulty that you're facing in expressing this courage, in exhibiting the courage that you are exhibiting. So thank you. Leone, you mentioned the Civil Rights Act, and actually this ties in too, because when the Civil Rights Act was written in 1964, members of Congress added sex as a category as an effort to kill the bill. It was basically focused around race, and people added sex and thought that this was going to sink it, but it actually stayed in and was signed into law. But the EEOC and other organizations are what they are today because there were women who flooded the federal government with complaints about pay disparities, segregated occupations by sex, harassment, all types of mistreatment. And they forced the EEOC which had no intention of dealing with any type of sexual discrimination on the basis of sex, to go that route. So just as Julia's perseverance is important for workers, it's also important that we use these organizations, these agencies, because agency like the EEOC would not be what it is today were it not for women who fought to make it fight for an end to discrimination at work. So the difficulty here is that I also want to acknowledge is that coming forward and making these complaints can also put you at risk of housing precarity. You lose jobs, you lose income, you find it hard to find a place to live. The event that I'm talking about that we're doing next week looks at a different aspect of housing inequality and housing affordability. Just as workers are facing a difficult time in making money to get into housing, the amount of housing that's available is drying up because of the role of private equity, going in, buying up places, putting them out on the market at high rents, high selling prices. And so next week, we're doing a screening of the film Push. It's a documentary that came out in 2019, but it speaks to a lot of the things that have happened with housing affordability and housing availability with the pandemic in the past couple of years. The event will be on the 1st. It will start at, let's see, 3 p.m. Central with a screening, and then an hour and a half later, 4:30 to 5:30 Central, we will have a panel discussion including Brother Leone, Sarah Michael Bust from Bargaining for the Common Good. There's a professor from the University of California, Berkeley, who studies housing inequality and markets and private equity. I'll be moderating that event, and I'm looking forward to it because it's going to be an opportunity to tell people what this housing problem is like and how private equity contributes to some of the difficulties that you're facing in the Chicago area, that people are facing from coast to coast and small towns everywhere in between. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Leone. Thank you so much again. Thank everyone else for the opportunity to come to you this evening and to listen and learn from all of you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, James. I'm just going to leave you right there instead of returning you to an attendee. If you can stay the rest of the time, great. And if you can't, we certainly understand. Thanks very much. And again, thanks for inviting me to be part of the panel. I put in the chat and we will send this out again. As I've said, we'll send this out again in an email, but you can go to that link for more information and to register. And then I will also send that out in an email. James.
One thing about the screening, you do not have to be there as it happens. Push is available through Netflix. So if you don't have the time and you want to watch it ahead of Tuesday and then join the panel itself for an hour, you're certainly free to watch it ahead of time and then just join the panel. I know not everybody can afford to spend 2.5 hours watching a movie and then a panel. So there is an opportunity to watch it beforehand and then just save time for the panel. So thanks.
Awesome. So yes, we will send that out just to remind people now. So if I understand correctly, the screening of Push, the documentary, starts at 3 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. That goes about an hour and a half, and then the panel starts. So again, what James was saying, if you can't make it for the screening, but you still want to join, then you can join for the last hour, and that'll be the panel.
Exactly.
Right? And as James said, and this is why Working Family Solidarity was formed, a lot of us and a lot of other great organizations work on it too, and that is to put together the issue of jobs and housing. In Julia's case, as James said, and many others, you lose your job. Now, where are you going to live? Or you may be having trouble by having the same mentality of the owner of the building that the owner of the company has. And so I just wanted to come back to Angelica and also to Julia. We've got a little bit more time, and partly just open the floor to you guys. Started first, so now it's been 30-40 minutes that you've been listening to everyone else talk about all kinds of Title VII and lawsuits and so on. And I can certainly add a few comments or specific questions, but I just wonder if you have anything you just wanted to throw in as you're hearing all this talk on how we're going to fight back and how much it costs, like in Julia's case, to speak out. Just anything that either of you or both of you want to add. Gracias, you got it.
Sí, mira, pues sí, la verdad que sí me cuesta, ¿verdad? Trabajo como volver a repetir lo que sucedió, porque pues retrocedes al momento en que me pasó eso y son cosas fuertes. Entonces, por eso no quise entrar en más detalles, porque fue muy fuerte todo, ¿verdad? Desde casi al tercer día que comencé a trabajar. Y pues ya después ya fue más fuerte hasta pues que llegó el punto a donde me ofrecía, ¿verdad? Me ofrecía $20 y yo dije, pues que tampoco valgo, porque pues yo creo que ni una de las que anda por ahí le dan $20, porque eso es lo que me ofrecía. Entonces por eso yo no quiero entrar en muchos detalles de lo que sucedió. Y pues sí, por eso yo quiero, ¿verdad? Continuar adelante. Y pues que nuestra gente, nuestras mujeres y todo lo que son víctimas, no se dejen comprar, no se dejen intimidar, porque pues la necesidad a veces lo lleva a hacer cosas en las cuales uno pues te ofrecen, y si tú estás en esa situación donde te las estás mirando que no tienes para esto, y pues caen en la trampa, y ya después ya mucho menos van a ser respetadas, porque una vez que cayeron la primera vez, ya después ya no van a ser respetadas, ya van a ser utilizadas, porque ya se van a sentir con más derechos y pues tú las cediste. Y yo creo que ya en ese momento que ellas después quieran hacer algo, pues ya no van a tener la misma, su palabra ya no va a tener la misma validez. ¿Por qué? Porque ya se dieron la primera vez por voluntad propia. Entonces, por eso yo digo ahorita, ¿verdad? Qué bueno, me da mucho gusto y me alegra saber, ¿verdad? Que hay organizaciones y que pues tenemos abogados dentro de estas organizaciones que están dispuestos a ayudarnos a seguir adelante con nosotros para pues llegar a donde tengamos que llegar. Entonces yo por eso estoy bien agradecida con las organizaciones que tienen, con las personas, ¿verdad? Que nos hacen fuertes, que me están apoyando. Ahorita yo sé que hay personas, ¿verdad? Que deberían de estar quizás mirando sus telenovelas, ¿verdad? Pero pues están aquí para llevar esto más adelante y pues que seamos escuchados, que se hagan valer nuestros derechos más que nada. Ya dejemos, que ya no sigamos permitiendo que sigan abusando de nosotros. Yo por eso estoy aquí. Yo soy una persona, y lo voy a decir con todas sus palabras, soy una persona que está indocumentada en este país, pero yo no tengo miedo. Yo no tengo miedo porque yo estoy defendiendo mis derechos y defendiendo los derechos de muchas otras personas que están en la misma situación que yo estoy pasando o que pasé. Y así como yo estoy ahorita aquí, ¿verdad? Que me sucedió eso dentro de estar trabajando. Yo sé que ahorita hay muchas personas dentro de una fábrica, dentro de un lugar de trabajo, que pueden estar sufriendo lo mismo que por lo que yo pasé. Y quiero que escuchen y que sepan en dónde hay todo esto. Por eso a mí me gustaría, ¿verdad? Que pusiéramos más información, que pongamos flyers en las tiendas, en las lavanderías, en los lugares en donde nosotros vamos, ¿verdad? Que vamos a hacer nuestras compras, vamos a lavar, que andamos de un rumbo para otro, encontrar la información, porque pues yo digo, a mí me está sucediendo esto, pero yo estoy mirando que aquí hay algo en donde a mí me pueden ayudar. Sí, porque a veces nos quedamos callados porque no sabemos en dónde ir. No sabemos en dónde encontrar ese representante que nos va a representar. ¿Sí? Por eso yo digo, adelante y sigamos luchando por tanta injusticia que hay pues ahora sí que decir que todo el mundo, porque no nomás es aquí, Estados Unidos, es en todo el mundo, aunque hay mucha injusticia. ¿Por qué? Porque hay mucha pobreza. Por la pobreza, muchas veces permitimos que violen nuestros derechos. Y ya basta de que sigan violando nuestros derechos esas personas que tienen el poder, el dinero para ultrajarnos. Es lo que yo digo, ya basta. Defendámonos y ayúdenos a defender a los demás. Y sigo en la lucha. Seguimos en la lucha y espero que sigan apoyándome y que estén conmigo. Y más que nada el de allá arriba, que no nos abandone, que él nos lleve a continuar y pues fuera miedo. Si nos tenemos que ir para México, pues nos vamos. Ya que...
No, sí.
Aquí, muchas gracias.
Gracias, Julia. Y Angelica, por favor, just there's so many things have been talked about, so whatever you want to focus.
No, yeah. What can I say? I'm very proud of Julia for speaking up and advocating for women out there, men, for anybody who's going through these situations, right? We have families who are already working minimum wage, and just because you're working minimum wage, that doesn't mean that you have to take, sexual assault or discrimination. You're not alone. And like I said previously, there are organizations, just like the organization that I'm so proud to work for, the Community Wellness for St. Anthony Hospital. So if anybody out there needs assistance or needs any help, I'm going to provide you with the number that you could call. It is 773-523-5079. That's the number for our community wellness program. You could call. Like I said previously, we offer a lot of services, starting from advocating for clients or patients like Julia. We do, especially, since she's been a victim, she needs that emotional support. So we provide free counseling, individual counseling, family counseling, individual therapy, couples therapy. So the services are out there. Please take advantage and call. Our services are free. We are more than happy to help. And if we don't have the resources, we're not going to turn our backs on you. We are definitely going to advocate for you and look for other organizations that might be able to help in this situation. And like Julia said, together we could do this. We have the power. We have a voice, and why not keep advocating for people who need it. We also support family with housing, and with gas. I'm sorry. So and any type of help, just call and we'll be able to help you. One more thing that I would like to mention, don't give up. If something happens to you, like in Julia's situation, go to the police. Don't wait. Save the clothes, whatever items you have that it's gonna incriminate the other person, please save it. Go to the police station. If one police station discriminates you, go to a next one. Don't give up, because at the end somebody is going to be there to help you, and not only that, but you could also kind of like put a stop, because it's not one person who has gone to the police station, and just because you are not a US citizen, or you're not born here, or you are being discriminated by the type of ID that you give out, that is discrimination. And the system needs to know what type of people are working in those type of environments, and we need to put a stop. We need to put a stop, for discrimination more than anything. And I'm so happy to be part of this. I'm so happy to be, find resources and find, attorneys, Leone, organizations like this who are advocating for people in the community who really, really need it and who do not have a voice. We are not supposed to take no discrimination. So let's keep fighting together. Together we could change a lot of things. And thank you, everyone. for everything that everybody does. And I'm looking forward to keep working and keep with this fight, because we could do it. We could do it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Angelica. Thanks a lot, Julia. I want to make a comment briefly here, and then we will also see if Jorge wants to add any last comment. I also want to call attention to what Maria put in the chat in Spanish, but she said, hey, as several people have done, about different bits of information, saying, hey, Angelica, it'd be great to get that number that you just said. And so I want to remind everyone, I put it in Spanish back to everyone, to Maria, but I reminded her that all of this information we will put in an email tomorrow. So I'm going to ask the panelists to send me emails after this or in the morning with any of the most relevant things they want to put out there publicly, the name, the phone number, so on. And then I'll send that out all together. So every single attendee, even people who've gone off, because we automatically keep the email list for the attendees here. And, and you don't have to use that info, but so anyone, all the different contact information, so that we will keep this list. So we're Working Family Solidarity, and again, no obligation, but we'll let you know if we do a follow-up action, or if we to support Julia or others, or if other women want to come forward and join our struggle, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we will be letting you know. I wanted to give you some information that I'm putting in the chat right now, a website, a web page that you can click on. I'm going to go ahead and put it in there. It's very relevant to this topic of civil rights, of women's rights, but also especially also of racial injustice. And my colleague, I gave her a shout out at the beginning of this webinar, Sharon Norwood, who's here with us. She's listening and supporting. And Sharon's our main organizer. And she has fought as a woman, as a Black woman, as a Black person, against racial discrimination all her life. We're very lucky to have her as a staff person. And I wanted to just let you all know, and I put in the chat, and again, I will send this out to everyone tomorrow, but WTTW, essentially Chicago Public Television, has a groundbreaking series called Firsthand Segregation. So if you go to that link, it's pretty simple. It's just WTTW, the station.com/firsthand. And I'll send it out again tomorrow. Go to that. And then there you'll get kind of a litany of other things. You can click on the video. You can click on the different videos. So Sharon was one of the dozen or so people in Chicago who were interviewed over a series of many weeks. They followed different people around to tell their story of segregation and racism in Chicago. African-American people, Latinx people, Asian people, all kinds of folks. And Sharon talked about her struggle. And so I wanted to mention that. We're talking about workplace violence against women. I think there's different types of workplace violence, and I think there's different types of violence that we suffer. It's not to say that it's exactly the same as workplace violence against women, but the economic violence, the racial violence, the emotional violence, the destruction of our cultures and our peoples, right? And the destruction of our self-worth. And we have to defend against it. And Sharon's been a big defender of that. And so again, we don't have time to talk about that too much more, but the kickoff was yesterday evening. There was a big shindig, and different people were on a really great panel. But it's going to be a docu-series coming out on TV, but it's also on the internet. So again, if you want to check on that, you can go to that link. I also, again, will be putting that back out there. But we're proud that Sharon's been a fighter, and Julia. And again, our struggles as different people are so interrelated that sometimes I wonder why we actually think we're different people. But we're trained to think we're different, right? We're trained to think we have almost nothing in common with that person whose skin is lighter than ours, darker than ours, taller than us, speaks a different language, speaks English with an accent, when ultimately we're all so very, very similar, and we have tremendous power in our numbers. I can't repeat that enough because I'm trying to do a better job of it myself. So I have to keep repeating it so I remember it. We're going to close with the last, I'll give an official closing in a moment, but we wanted to give Jorge a minute or two before we end for any last thoughts that he has.
Just briefly, I just wanted to reiterate the point that that Julia brought up, that a person's status as being undocumented does not keep you from defending your rights in the workplace. And that goes for almost all workplace rights that we can think of. In fact, in a situation where there's an assault like this in the workplace, it's a possibility that cooperating and filing a police report puts you in a position where you may be able to positively affect your immigration status and petition for a change in status as a result of being a victim of a crime and participating with that investigation.
Awesome. All I can do is keep saying the two words that I end up saying most of the time on these things, which are thank you. Thanks a lot to Julia. Thanks a lot to Angelica. Thanks a lot to Jorge. Thanks a lot to Reverend Campbell, who again, she had something at 7. She actually got on her next meeting a little late to stay with us. Thank you to Brother James. You know, it's interesting again how the movement kind of brings a lot of us together. With great people, as all of you are. I'm thinking of James just because it was sort of a quote unquote accident, but then you realize that those are never really accidents, right? Because we gravitate towards each other, to people who are also tired, frankly, of this system that really treats people like commodities, housing like commodities. That's what March 1st is about. But it's really a society that treats us like producers, right? We can produce wealth for the tiny elite that have tremendous power in our society and in most other countries. And that's why we like to say working family solidarity, to remind ourselves that we're all workers. Sometimes we earn a little more than someone else, so we think we're not a worker anymore. But unless you're independently wealthy, roughly 1% of, maybe 2% of all people are, unless you're independently wealthy, you're a worker, because you don't know if you'll be working tomorrow. You do not control your own employment. You don't control whether you really can pay rent or mortgage next month. You think you can, but you don't know if you can. And actually, there's a power in kind of realizing that we're all in that class of people. And so we can actually start to think of ways that we can use that power, either withholding our labor, shifting our labor, finding ways to do our labor where we get more rights. And then we need to shift that into housing, right? Because every time we win those labor victories, what happens? They raise our rent, right? They raise property taxes. And we have to figure out how to stop that. So we're going to close now, but obviously this is one tiny chapter in a lifetime of struggle. Thanks to everyone who spoke. Thanks to everyone who said something in the chat. Thanks to everyone who joined us. Again, some of you on here, I know you didn't say a lot, but you have distinguished histories in your neighborhoods of incredible struggle. And some of you are sort of the unknown heroes that actually really make this whole struggle work. And we're really appreciative and we're proud of all of you. Julia, de nuevo, muchas gracias por todo. And we will see you next time. We'll let you know what our next teaching is. And we'll send you more information about all the things that people talked about and about March 1st. And bless you all and wish you a terrific night.
Thank you.
Buenas noches a todos, a todas. And thank you very much to Somos Sur,
Yes.
Translation and Interpretation Collective, Eva and Chris. Thank you so
It's
much.
very good.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks. I'll have a good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.